can a $9 bottle of magic really fix my Porsche's $20,000 engine problem? I recently picked up this beautiful Porsche 911's at a local auction for half off what an average retail one costs, and I thought it was just because it had some higher miles. But after driving it for about 10 minutes, the low coolant light came on, and after hunting for a coolant leak for the greater part of a day, it dawned on me that I might have just made a huge mistake. And my block tester confirmed this huge mistake. The purple fluid turned yellow because there are exhaust gases present in this Porsche's cooling system. You see, when you can't find a cooling leak outside of your car, that means it's leaking internally in the engine, and well, that means you kinda need a new engine. We have a failure somewhere either in our head gasket, a cracked cylinder head, or a cracked engine block, allowing coolant to escape in an area that will only be found if we drop and dismantle everything. On top of this issue, I did an overall health test of our engine and found it a bit iffy. While we had great compression and leak down results, we found that 2 out of the 6 cylinders have bore scoring, another reason a Porsche dealership would suggest a complete engine replacement. This isn't just a problem on my Porsche, but a pretty common one on the same generations, and seriously costs well over $20,000 for an engine replacement, and that's without labor. Or it's also around $20,000 to get my current engine rebuilt, a process which will take months to complete. So not only is it expensive, it's time consuming, and well, it's not really all that fun, especially because we know what the outcome will be. But what if a company actually made a product for just $9 that's been around for over 80 years that claims to permanently fix all problems we might have? Well, it sounds like a no-brainer, and I think the risk greatly outweighs the reward here.
Let's face it, nobody actually thinks this stuff works, and on top of that, a bunch of you guys have left comments below that it's going to completely ruin my engine. And well, I have used one head gasket sealer in the past, and it actually did kind of work. It was on a junky old Range Rover that was arguably worthless and mechanically totaled, so it didn't really matter that it worked. The car was garbage anyway. This Porsche, on the other hand, is worth over 5 figures, even with a completely trash motor. It's been meticulously maintained and serviced by its previous one owner, and well, let's just say we have a single crack in our cylinder head causing all of our problems. If this stuff is capable of sealing it, well, it could extend the life of this car out several thousand more miles. And there's only one way to find out, that is to, well, run it in the car. But it's not as simple as just pouring it in and praying. Well, we actually have to prep the cooling system by flushing it out. So let's get to that now.
Now on this Porsche, there are 3 main areas to dump the coolant from: a drain plug near the thermostat housing, and the 2 pipes closer to the front of the car that run to the 2 independent radiators. And by the way, if you ever plan on doing what we're doing, remember, coolant gets hot, really hot. So be mindful of everything, wear protective gear, and well, just don't buy cheap cars in the first place and you'll be better off than me. Another instruction specifically to this block sealer is to remove your thermostat. Now I didn't do this on my Range Rover, and the sealer pretty much sealed the thermostat shut, causing the car to initially overheat. Luckily on the Porsche, the thermostat housing is easily exposed, and you can remove it with just 4 bolts that come out with only 6 swear words. I'm gonna hold on to this gasket, and we got the thermostat that's part of the housing now. All right, is that gonna let us have it now? Yep, there it goes. Woo! All right. Let's go see how we actually pull the thermostat out of the housing. So the spring is putting tension up against this bar on these 2 metal tabs, which are part of the housing, and that's keeping the thermostat in. Now I looked all this up before we went and did this job, because if you're gonna do it like we're doing it, you're really gonna wanna remove your thermostat. And in some cases, like the Range Rover, the thermostat is built into the housing and you have to replace them all as a complete piece. I did notice that you can buy just this thermostat separate of the housing, or you could buy the whole entire assembly. Here it comes. There it is. So if you go to Porsche, you probably are buying the whole entire housing plus the thermostat, but it comes out easy enough, and it's definitely something, at least in my very limited experience dealing with sealers, you want to have out of the car, because it's going to just cycle everything through the system way quicker, way easier, and will take out one less failure point. Here's what the inside of our thermostat housing looks like now. And it'll be really interesting to compare this later when we reinstall the thermostat and see if there's any sort of gunk that comes of the sealer itself. Now, one of the steps that the instructions of our sealer has that a lot of the other ones don't is they tell you to disable fuel injection on the affected cylinder. If you remember from our scope camera, it looks like our affected cylinder is number 2 because we saw water in that cylinder. Unfortunately, cylinder 2 is buried somewhere back here. And well, I have been able to feel
where the actual clip is, I wasn't able to unhook it and pull it off. I couldn't even do it to the cylinder closest to me right now. It is really jammed up in there, and all the tutorials online tell you that if you need to do an injector job on this car, well, you gotta lower the engine quite a bit. For this test, we're gonna keep things simple and DIY friendly, and we're not gonna end up messing with the fuel system. Now, on most cars, disabling the fuel injection on a single cylinder is as simple as going up to the wiring harness, pushing the clip and pulling it out like that. A 2-second step, and the reason why they likely tell us to do this is because the combustion in the affected cylinder, well, wherever the breach is, that combustion could potentially blow the sealer out as it's trying to set. With the fuel injection disabled, well, that cylinder might move up and down. There's no explosions happening, there's no pressure, and so it's better likely to set and seal. A little step that probably makes things quite a bit more effective. Unfortunately, we can't do it in the Porsche, but let's cross our fingers and hope it works anyway.
With the thermostat out and the housing reinstalled, we continued to flush the car, using a vacuum filler to get clean water through the entire car's plumbing. Then we would run the car for a few minutes to cycle all the water around and dump it again.
Between the driving, the pressure testing, the losing of the coolant, the adding of the regular water, I thought for sure, I've added probably like 3-4 gallons at this point, and thought that our cooling system would be totally clear, very close to clear, and you can see how much coolant just stays in the system. You know, it was in the heater cores, in the radiators, it was pretty much everywhere. So we're gonna have to flush it 2 or 3 more times before it actually gets clear, and it is imperative that when you're doing this sort of seal that everything is as clean as can be, because this sort of sealer we're using mixed with antifreeze can actually harden and gel, and that's what we want to avoid.
Now let's quickly go back to the footage of the seized up thermostat out of that Range Rover. The sealer product we used here was thick and sludgy, and you see how it just caked everything up here. There's no way I'd want to run this in the Porsche. After reading through a bunch of safety data sheets, product reviews, and even speaking with technical support lines, I landed on what seems to be the cheapest sealer product on the market. They don't even sell this stuff at the auto parts store. I had to order it online. Now, if you watch regularly, you know I like to save a buck, but I didn't pick this stuff based on its price, more so on the really thorough prep process that it calls for and the simple formula it contains. Now, there's a ton of these products in the market, and a lot of them range between $40 and $100 a bottle. And while I believe that each person's application varies and they should pick a product based on their specific situation, all of the products have one thing in common, and that's the usage of sodium silicate. Sodium silicate is also known as liquid glass. This is the substance that makes its way into the breach in your engine. Whether it be a blown head gasket, warped or cracked head, or block, this stuff makes its way into the problem area, and as it heats up, it turns hard, thus filling in the gaps and making a seal.
All right, this is what I've been waiting for. Let's take a look and see what this stuff actually looks like. We're mixing in 3 quarts of hot water. All right, we're gonna mix this up, but it's actually settling more on the bottom. Now you can see that's really watery, and again, one of the reasons why I went with this is you cut it with water, it's not all thick and goopy, and we're gonna stick it right into the overflow tank. Oh, right there, look at, you can see some of the sediment, some of the nasty stuff right there. All right, with the radiator cap off, we're gonna start running this engine. Per the instructions, again, the cap is off. We just kind of want to fill things until it starts to get to temperature. So I'm going to fill it until it seems like it's full, and then we'll put the cap back on and let it run its 30 minutes. We have 138,768 miles on the clock. That'll be a good number to remember because this is where we're starting our test. We've got the low coolant light flashing because it probably doesn't like our current level, which is fine. We're not all the way topped off. What we want to be very vigilant of is the temperature itself. It's never went past that 175, and we need to run this car for about 30 minutes at 175. The instructions do say that you can shut the car off if it starts to overheat and restart the test, but we don't want to get there, and we shouldn't have that problem just because of what we've experienced before.
Well, I was kind of wrong about this. Of course, during the most important part, I kind of messed up. I didn't vacuum fill the system, and I didn't think I should do that, and here's why. The Porsche's cooling system is massive, substantially longer than other cars, and if I filled it to the brim, it might have diluted our block sealer to the point where it was ineffective. But now, since we were so low on water, the cooling system was loaded with air, which slowly raised its temperature past the midway point. We were able to run the car for about 15 minutes or so before this happened. Now, the instructions clearly say that if your car is overheating during this process, it's okay to give it a few seconds to cool down and run it again, which we ended up doing. The second time we ran it lasted only around 7 minutes before we had to shut it off. At only a little over 20 minutes runtime, I decided we could end the process here, as the instructions tell you to run the car for 20 to 30 minutes before giving the sealer 24 hours to cure. But before we let the car sit for 24 hours, the instructions do state that we need to release the remaining water sealer mixture from our cooling system and leave the drain systems open during its cure time.
You anxious to see what this looks like after it's been in the engine?
Yeah.
I think it's gonna look like some sludgy mess. It does. It just looks like dirty water.
Yep.
It looks almost like if like a table salt or a sugar didn't dissolve and it's still in there. But again, all the excess we've taken out of the system now. So I guess I don't feel too bad about it, at least not yet. But we got to wait a whole 24 hours to see if this fixed our car. So I thought yesterday was the exciting part. This is the exciting part. We're a little bit over 24 hours later. Remember, 24 hours is the cure time on the product we used. Now it's time to test things. We have all the drains still open, the two in the front that run to the radiator, the one drain plug in the back. All we got to do is put everything back so the cooling system is sealed again. We're going to vacuum fill this system with just straight water. We're going to leave the thermostat out for the time being, and then we'll break out that block tester, which will tell us real quick whether that sealer worked or not. We've been holding steady at 175 degrees for a little while now. So I have the magic juice. Let's see what happens. Now remember last time when this car was at temperature, this fluid changed instantly. Now I just am checking to make sure we're not sucking up any water. Since we vacuum filled it, it's pretty high. Look at this, nothing yet. And remember, the thermostat is out of the car currently. With the thermostat out of the car, if any exhaust gases were escaping right now, they should just go right through to the cooling system. Would you believe that it worked? I would say that that's pretty big success, at least so far. We're not 100% sure yet, but I mean, just look at that. Beautiful, beautiful. And this water is still as could be. I can't believe it. Now, it's too early to get super excited because we haven't even driven the car. And in theory, under load, there's going to be more pressure. So if our seal isn't really strong, it could just break apart. Some people report that these fixes last tens of thousands of miles, and some people report that these fixes last a few hours. So I think we should have a few tests here. Let me take it on a quick drive down the street, maybe just 5-6 miles, come back, and then we'll do a longer term test and see if it holds up through all of them. So when we got the car, it never had a check engine light, and we triggered the check engine light when we left the MAF unplugged, but you could see all these pending codes. Now, pending codes are something that wouldn't necessarily trigger the check engine light. A current one is, and you can see all of the misfires are for cylinder 2, the cylinder that we diagnosed as having the problematic break in either the cylinder head or the head gasket itself. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clear these fault codes. That way our check engine light goes away.
So we'll just take this quick drive here, then we can plug back in our code reader and see if during this drive we had another pending misfire. Now, while I was looking everything up online, I noticed one guy who suggested instead of just running this in the way we did it, in the way the instructions tell you to do it, to actually leave it in your cooling system and drive the car. Like literally leave it in your cooling system for your daily commute for several hundred miles. Now, when I hear that, I think of heat cycles, and we know that the sodium silicate, when it gets hot, it gets hard. So I would really question how this sealer would do through so many heat cycles over several hundred miles. And it's one of the things that I would be a bit concerned about leaving it in this Porsche's cooling system. Right now we're in a lot of stop and go traffic, which I think is pretty ideal for our initial test. And well, if worst case scenario things failed, remember our only issue here was that we were losing coolant. So our low coolant light would pop on and we just have to add some coolant and we're back at square one. Now, the idea of adding this sealer and then immediately after going on a drive and putting the car under load is one that initially I thought, wow, that might be a better idea than just letting it circulate under idle. And I brought this idea up to somebody at the company that actually manufactures the product that we used, and they said the pressure from the combustion is just gonna blow out any sealer that makes its way into the failed crack or failed area, and they think that running it under idle is a much better idea. Hence why the instructions tell you to pull the fuel injection, if you can, on the affected cylinders. So far so good. Again, it's only a short drive, but we are up to temperature. We're right in the middle of the cooling gauge again at 175 degrees. On the way back, I plan on giving it a little bit more gas. Hopefully it holds up. Sage asked me to pick him up a drink. Of course I had to get one. It is not an ideal time to take the Porsche 911 to Redline, but we got to get somewhere close. Let's see here. I'm gonna take it slow just upon initial start. We'll put in a second. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, foot to the floor. McDonald drinks don't fall. All right, not bad. We got it a little bit over 6,000 RPMs there. Temperature's holding nice and steady. Remember, there still is no thermostat installed. We're on our way home to see if our short-term test has worked. While our engine is warm, we're setting up for a quick oil change, which I think is imperative after running a product like this. Think about if there's a crack somewhere in our engine and whatever's in our cooling system is making its way out of it, well, very well could be in our oil. And even if there's trace amounts of that sealer that made its way over, well, that could lead to increased engine wear. Luckily, it's really simple to drop the oil in most modern Porsches. We just have one drain bolt on the pan here. Think I'm gonna get it? You think I'm gonna get it? Ah, we got it. No.
Sam,
what?
On the ground.
That's your fault. I
I
told you to get tarp.
There was one right there. You said you didn't need one.
Sage, you son of a gun. I might or might not have just made a really big mess, but either way, you don't know it. Next, make sure you got yourself a 74 millimeter cap wrench, not the one that goes 74 to 76 millimeters. You'll find out really quick that it doesn't work, and our oil filter housing here is on super tight. No matter how many tarps we have, we can never seem to find the right place to put them. Now, I mean that in two ways. I mean, I don't ever know where we put them back, and number two, we never actually put them on the ground in the place where the oil falls. I don't know why dropping the oil seemed more difficult than the entire block sealing process. Hopefully we're at the easy part now, which is to refill everything. This car takes 9 quarts, and luckily the local store sells this 40-weight Pennzoil Platinum Euro spec, which is exactly what our Porsche calls for. I don't know if you guys watched Project Farm, but he had a really cool video where he tested Pennzoil Platinum against another product, and you could see a visible difference in the wear protection of the Pennzoil Platinum versus the other stuff. Of course, this car has no dipsticks. There's not a simple way to test it. We've got to test it from the dashboard with the car warmed up. I've got a little bit over 8 quarts in, so again, we're going to run that test, and then we'll top it off as needed. Now, that really solid wear protection is probably because Pennzoil Platinum is made from natural gas, not just regular crude like most other motor oils. And protection is what we need, especially since our engine is not in the healthiest shape, especially with that little bit of bore scoring that we found. So when it comes time for your next DIY oil change, I highly suggest you check out Pennzoil Platinum Full Synthetic. I'm going to drop a link down in the description box so you can learn a little bit more about it. And I want to give a huge thanks to Pennzoil for sponsoring this video.
With a fresh oil change and that short drive under our belt, let's do another block test. Remember last time, Sage, when we did this? It turned like in 2 seconds, right?
Immediately, yeah.
This is awesome. This car has like new life with a bottle of head sealer and a fresh oil change. Dude, I'm so excited to drive it. We just gotta check the oil level and we should be good to go.
Now remember, this product and all head gasket sealers claim to be a permanent fix, and while I'm thrilled we've made it this far, we should really test it a little while longer before we celebrate. I set out to put as many miles on this car that I could before actually publishing this video.
I'll get your leg in the picture. And when people think I got a woman in the car. Man, this could totally be placebo, but this Porsche definitely feels a bit smoother, specifically at idle. And when you accelerate, definitely feels a little quicker. And well, it would make sense if we eliminated our misfire with the sealing process. We'll pick up the power of one cylinder and everything's gonna work way better. Let's just hope this all holds.
All throughout my drive, I had regular stops and checked the coolant level. Now, the coolant level in the reservoir does fluctuate as it heats up and whatnot, and initially I was a bit concerned as it looked to have dropped down a little, but the low coolant light never came on, ever, which used to pop up just after a few miles drive before we installed our sealer. But what did come on around 80 miles in was our check engine light. All right, we've driven the Porsche right under 90 miles since we've done the head sealer, and the check engine light just popped up, and I'm hoping this check engine light is anything but a cylinder 2 misfire. I've not received any low coolant light. I've been checking regularly. The coolant levels are holding. Everything feels great. The car still accelerates awesome, but we gotta stop and scan. All right, I found a little safe place to pull over here. It says diagnostic trouble codes. That's DTCs in this ECU. There's one. Oh man. I want to see, but I don't want to see. Let's hit OK. And then we're going to read our fault code. Come on, anything but a cylinder 2 misfire. Oh, look. Oh, that's amazing. This is good. This is good. Okay, so we've got a cooling system performance warning light. That is totally fine. Man, am I relieved. All that warning light is telling us is that our cooling system isn't operating as intended. And you know, your thermostat can fail in an open position, just like we have now, no thermostat. The same action is going to happen, whereas coolant is going to cycle the entire system instead of just cycling part of the system with the thermostat closed. Obviously, your engine management pays attention to all this stuff, and it's important to run a thermostat because to get the best performance and to have your car operate the best, you do want a thermostat to regulate the temperatures in the block. Of course, we're going to reinstall ours. You got to take it all apart to do that. We'll go about 100 miles before we put it back in place. For right now, it doesn't really matter, but we'll continue to monitor things, and let's just hope this keeps running as good as it has been. With the car now cool, we removed the thermostat housing one more time and took a good look around. And this is a far cry from what we saw on the Range Rover. The actual housing looked clean, and there's no apparent sealer that's stuck to it. On the block side, there is some white residue that easily flaked off. I can only assume this residue is a thin layer of the sealer. No major chunks of anything were in the residual water that came out of our cooling system, and overall this seems like a pretty great success. With our thermostat reinstalled, we are getting up to temperature right about now. We've logged over 130 miles since we ran that block sealer. I say it's time for one more quick block test. I think the results pretty well speak for themselves. I'm ecstatic and I had a ton of fun making this video. If you guys enjoyed watching it, make sure you hit that like button. Now 130 miles isn't the end all be all, but I think the next steps here is to make the 911's my new daily driver and retire the 260,000 mile Corvette that I've been driving since late last year when we picked it up, and I'll keep you guys up to date on my Instagram, which you can follow me here or click the link in the description. Obviously, if something crazy happens, we will make a
a huge update video on it, but let's cross our fingers and hope nothing crazy happens. You guys think this Porsche can make it, say, another 1,000 miles with just the block sealer holding up whatever our issue is? Well, let me know down in the comments, and make sure if you're not subscribed already, you click that button down there because we've got a whole lot more fun videos, but hopefully not too much fun like finding a cracked cylinder head in your cheap auction Porsche. Guys, I can't thank each and every one of you enough for watching today, and I'll catch you very soon.